This pit is where the septic tank and the pump station are located. Septic tank's at the far end. This end is the pump station. That's the wiring box and an alarm, supposedly, for the pump station if that fails. It's brick lined and it's just open like this. It's been like this since we got the place, and we're going to put some risers in here. So the first step is get down here and dig out all this stuff and leaves and stuff that are covering the tanks. It's actually exposed down there, you just can't tell because of all this junk that's on top. So I want to see if this pit is wide enough to accept the septic risers without digging it out more. I got these AeroSeal septic tank risers. Got two because we have a pump station, that's what the tall one's for, and then a septic tank. And they're in that pit, and because the ground is sloped and the tanks are level, it's shallower at one end than the other. But these are, I ordered these direct from AeroSeal. Those big ones in two pieces. There's a seam right about there, and that is a single piece. And then there's some other pieces. There's a flange mounting thing that goes on the tank itself, and then these get secured to that, and then the lids, of course, for access in the future. At least got a screw in there to hold it. So I've dug out the stuff on the pump station side, and it's not going to show up well, but this is the edge of the lid right here. Got 2 or 3 inches to the edge of this brick thing. And here's the edge right here. About a 2-foot hatch. The outside of my feet are right at the edges of it, in that direction. And again in this direction. So I've only got a couple inches to the brick on this side, on all 3 sides. This side, if I dig some more out, I'll have more clearance. So this is the septic tank side so closer to the water. And here's the hatch. And the edge of the hatch is right here. And pretty much right to the edge over there. There's a little bit of room here. So this one's a little closer. There's more stuff I can dig out, and it's very root bound with all this ivy and junk. So it's hard digging. So I think I'm going to rough assemble one of the bases, see how much space that needs. That'll tell me what I have to do here. This is the pump station. Got that cleaned out a little better. Looks like maybe 3 inches on all sides. The tank actually ends right here. And then there's a space between my foot is on the edge of the septic tank. There's about a foot between the 2 tanks right here. So that earth I did not move. So I've only got like 4 inches from the edge of the hatch to the edge of that tank anyway. This might be big enough. It'd be nice. It would be nicer working in this hole than having to dig it out. So we'll see where this leads. The mounting flange that comes with this kit is just 4 pieces of plastic that snap together. It's in a very obvious way. You really can't do it wrong. So here I'm just assembling the 4 pieces, and then I'm going to trial fit that base in the cleaned out tank area to see if it fits. So here's the septic tank side of this operation, all cleaned out to the edges of the brick. Septic tank side. And I think, and this basically works the way it is. It's just the tank. The pump station's more critical that this end up with maximum access because someone might have to get in there to change a pump. This side, basically the whole opening is available through the circle. You can see the edges of this here and here, and then the other 2 edges are under the flange a little bit. I could adjust it that way a bit. This edge here is not ideal, but I think it's okay. Maybe I'll trim a little bit of the edge off here. I don't see how that's going to matter. As long as the main circular mounting flange is intact and a little bit outside of it, I don't see why that won't work for securing this. The sealant for this flange, this is the bottom side of the mounting flange, the sealant goes in that groove. So as long as that has good contact all around, then we don't have anything to worry about. The butyl tape goes on the bottom side of this outer ring. You can see how that's a little higher. And once this lid is removed, that'll sit down flat on the tank. And as long as that seals all the way around, I think we're good. And the pump station side here basically fits. I just think that especially that corner needs to be trimmed because that's come up hard on the brick in that corner. This corner a little bit, but otherwise the whole square lid is inside that opening. So we have full access once this riser is installed, and that's important here because there's a pump in there that may need to be serviced. So I modified this base for the pump station. Had to trim this corner of the flange on the base a little bit to fit inside this brick pit. That corner is as far as it can go. This keeps the hatch centered in the opening. That hatch will come out before I install this, obviously. And I took off about the minimum that I could. So that'll work. The whole round seal, this raised part here, that's where the butyl goes on the bottom side. And that is all the way outside the hatch. So that's going to seal as well as it will ever seal. And I'll just put another screw somewhere in that corner. These have these pre-cast dimples for fasteners, but I don't see why that matters too much. The riser kit for the pump station was 29 inches tall, and that required 2 sections of pipe, which I had to assemble on site. So to start, I started at the bottom. This is the mounting flange that goes on the tank that I've been using to trial fit. And I wrapped the butyl sealant provided, it's butyl tape, around the mounting flange. There's a little groove that it fits into, and this is the so-called thin tape. It's about 3/8 of an inch thick, and this is to seal the pipe to the flange itself. Installation was straightforward. Just wrap it around, stick it in the groove, peel the paper off. I found I had to stretch it at the end because it wasn't quite long enough, but the beauty of butyl is you can just kind of stretch it. It's like silly putty. So I stretched it around until it met the first end, kind of kneaded the two ends together, and then pulled off the paper. Now I put the base on the ground and installed the pipe on top. Pressed it firmly into place all the way around in that sealant. The pipe diameter is a little bit larger than the raised area on the flange, so you have to kind of center it over the opening so there's a space all the way around, and then press the pipe right in firmly. I turned the whole arrangement back over so that I could easily reach the bottom, and then I installed the 4 screws that secure the base flange to the pipe itself. There's 4 little dimpled openings at 4 points of the clock, and I found it was a little easier to do a quick pre-drill first before installing the screws. It just made it easier to get the screws started. The screws just hold it together, and I just brought them up so they were secure and tight, but not so that it pulled the flange into the pipe. Left that space all the way around. The first length of pipe had this adapter flange already installed on the top from the factory. So now to install the second piece, I just prepared the top of that pipe, cleaned it off, and then more of the same butyl tape. Same process as with the flange on the bottom. Butyl tape, press the second section of pipe into place, and then secure it with screws. Fully installed, this leaves a little gap, as you can see, around that adapter flange, and that's the way it's supposed to look. The diameter of that pipe's just a little bigger than the flange, and the screws shouldn't be pulling it in tight. They just secure it in place in the sealant. This piece is a little safety feature that you put inside the pipe, and it's designed to lock into the shape of the flange that's inside. It's kind of a twist lock thing, so you get it lined up correctly and turn it a few degrees and it locks right in. And it's just a little bit of a barrier across the opening. With a successful test fit, I cleaned out carefully around the hatch and got ready to remove the hatch and do the final installation. Before pulling the hatch, I went ahead and got everything ready so that I could just install the riser as soon as the hatch was out. This time I'm using the heavy butyl tape. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick around the base flange. This will seal it to the concrete top of the septic tank, or actually pump station in this case. The butyl protrudes quite a bit from the sealing flange, so that ought to give a good seal when I press this into the concrete during installation. Uh-oh, that's not supposed to be full like that. That wasn't a good sign. This is the pump station, and it's supposed to be much lower than that. It should be no more than halfway full at any time. So that was not a good sign. Obviously, I knew the old alarm light there next to me, that never worked. Never had any belief that it did work. But even so, I had no idea that pump station was full or non-functioning. So we called the septic tank company, and they agreed to send out a pump truck and pump out the tank and the pump station for us. and look into what was going to be needed. And in the meantime, I saw no reason I couldn't go ahead and get that riser installed over the pump station, since I had everything ready to go and the top was out. So I just went ahead and installed it. Used my weight to press the butyl into the top of the concrete tank. And then I installed 4 Tapcon screws through the plastic flange and into the concrete. There's a crew building a dock across the creek from me, so the sound you hear in the background is their impact on driving deck screws in place. It took some minor acrobatics to reach into the tight corner and get those 2 screws installed on those tall corners. Super fun though. With all the screws in, one more dance around the flange and some weight on the top to make sure that butyl was really pressed well into the concrete, because that's the only thing that truly seals this to the top of the tank. The screws just hold it in place so that it can't rotate or move, but the sealant is the key here. Well, it's under those leaves somewhere. There it is. So with that first riser in place over the pump station, and in the meantime the pump truck came and pumped out my tank, so it was time to get ready for the installation on the septic tank itself. This is the tank itself. Test fitting the flange at the bottom. This is the edge of the top, and this is the edge of the top. On this side, because of the brick wall here, it's a little tight, so the whole thing needs to go this way a little. So I'm going to cut it on that red line just inside that flange, just to give it a little more room to go over and make sure that this sealing area, which is right in here, is able to sit flat on the tank once I remove the lid. That's what's important. So that's definitely better. The edge of this lid is right about here, underneath. See it right there. The clean area next to the dirt. Right there. I might clip this corner just a touch, just to let me push this whole thing. Oh, there we go. It goes all the way. So that gives me good clearance of that ring all the way around, which means it'll seal. I could probably take a touch more off this edge that I just cut, just to make sure there's plenty of space for that butyl to seal on the top of the tank. Yep, I took a little more off just to give me a little more clearance all the way around. Left that whole sealing part right there. So once I get the rest of this cleaned out right to the edges, which I'll do next, this should be good to go. assembling and installing the second riser was the same as the first one, except this one didn't have a second piece on top, as it was a shorter riser. So we'll just speed through most of the process here. Fits pretty good. I've got this all assembled. This is just a dry fit. Again, it's close on this side, but I've dealt with that. The hatch is basically all inside that, so when I pull the hatch out, this will be good clear access. And room for the screws. I'll get it as tight as I can to the brick over here on this side when I install it. I think I'll scrape a little more of the dirt off those bricks so that when I put this in, I don't push it down. So I want the concrete to be as clean as possible for this butyl to seal. So here's where this ended up for now. They maybe could have been a little higher, but I didn't want it to stick way up above the ground. I'd rather ease the grade back around these when I backfill. We've got to get the pump fixed. When I opened that, the pump station was full to the top, which meant the tank had to be full. So we had that pumped. They can't get here to look at the pump until next week. It's right before the 4th of July. Today is Thursday, July 3rd. So we've got at least 3 days. But they pumped the tank and the pump station. So we should be in good shape. And I wanted to replace this, what passes for an alarm anyway. So I'm sure that's going to be all part of this. So I'm not going to backfill until that's done, just in case. They need to get in there more than these allow. I don't have material to do it anyway. But that was not a bad project. In the process, I found out that stuff wasn't working right, so that's probably for the best, even though, you know, I hate to have to deal with stuff like septic pumps and alarms and all that, but what are you going to do? Anyway, that's where it ended up. My one comment is I think these risers are more expensive than I would have thought they should be, but it's a nice system. And I look forward to filling in this pit and being done with this. This has been such a strange thing to have everybody comments on it. So in digging out along the house here, removed quite a bit of material from that far end so that the grade wouldn't be right against the house. I accidentally cut this wire that leads to the pump station over here. Now this didn't work before, but I assumed it was in a conduit. Because we had conduit coming down. And I thought conduit coming up, although now I see the wire in question actually just comes up the outside. But anyway, I cut that accidentally, which is just as well, because now we can put a wire in and conduit and hopefully move this box over here to our little control center. So a few days later, this is a temporary repair to this wire, and it got us back in business with our septic pump, which we first discovered was not working on Thursday the 3rd of July. And on Monday, the following Monday, the guy came out from the septic company and repaired this wire, told me the pump was operational, so we were feeling pretty good while we waited for the final solution. So this is the new alarm, and then a final length of conduit from the box straight over to the tank through this trench, which will soon be hidden. But it ends up right here, and here's the conduit coming in. Comes straight across and right into this pit and down and into the riser through conduit the whole way. All the wiring connections are up here on top of this little safety thing, so they're all nice and high and dry. Lots of extra wire. And they come in through that conduit down there. And this is the way the pump station is supposed to look, well down below the top. So here I've got the septic mostly backfilled. Needs some fine tuning. It'll probably settle. Let this settle out. I can fill it some more if I need to. I'll keep those tops visible. Needs a little sculpting, but it's essentially backfilled. We'll get this walkway done and get this cleaned up, and then we'll be on to something final here.